are not talking about. We are living unified communication. We are living work from anywhere. I think that's a big leap that we have taken in terms of tech driven work and learning environments through the pandemic. It has accelerated the adoption. And I think Razorpay has, or the digital payment environment has been pioneering the efforts to kind of ease the consumer experience and enhancing adaptation of the digital stuff, which is going to be the way forward.
Absolutely, sir. I really agree with you on this. I mean, yes,
Joydeep sir and Rohit sir, Shweta ma'am is here. Good evening, Shweta ma'am.
Very good evening to everybody.
Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to IPS, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Yes, ma'am. We all will be starting in a minute, ma'am.
So, hi Shweta, me and Mr. Joydeep were just discussing before a pre-start to the event that how are things moving in COVID and where do you foresee? We were just discussing that before you just came in. So,
Yeah, it is. Hi, Jodeep. Hi, Rohit. It is crazy, but I'm sure there was a lot of learning since past 2 years. All of us have explored a lot about how you can, connect and communicate to people sitting far, far away and without traveling. So we were so used to traveling and meeting people in person, but it seems so convenient now. Just click on a link and you are on.
absolutely, yeah.
It's a different world altogether.
And thanks, Jodeep. I mean, for realizing that a time when we started using mobile phones and how critical it is a part. I remember 2 days back, my mobile suddenly got found off and entire data wiped away. And I was feeling like I'm handicapped, helpless, a little getting frustrated, sitting in office, what to do. I mean, I don't know what all things I did, and it restarted back with no data. And
Oh, shit.
a lot of official. I mean, today we are on the move with mobile, and those few minutes, half an hour, by the time I was trying to restore the everything. So that time I really realized where we are hooked up now.
Yeah.
Actually,
So machines are driving us nowadays.
yeah.
We've become slaves with zero memory. There used to be a time when we used to remember so many phone numbers, landline numbers. Now I don't know. I don't even remember my dad's number. I'm so dependent on my phone book.
Rohit sir, Joydeep sir, and Shweta ma'am, we have a small introduction and then we can start with the discussion.
Sure.
As our esteemed Prime Minister, Sri Narendra Modi said, I dream of digital India where knowledge is strength and it empowers the people.
The Digital India campaign aims to make government services available to the citizens electronically by online infrastructure improvement and also by enhancing internet connectivity. It also aims to empower the country digitally in the domain of technology.
Good evening, everyone. Today, I, Hiral, along with my co host Vishal, welcome you to Ignitia 2.0, a business conclave in collaboration with Team Newswire, the official news and media portal of IBS Hyderabad, and Dot Club, the official techno managerial club of IBS Hyderabad.
We hope all of you have a great time. The topic for the evening is Digital India, leveraging new IT solutions and innovations for smarter, connected, and digitally empowered India. We would like to welcome our esteemed members of Faculty Dean Academics, IBS Hyderabad, C.S. Shailajan Sir, Student Activity Coordinator, Professor Madhavi Garikaparthi Ma'am, HOD of Operations and IT and Area Coordinator, Shomudeep Chakravarti Sir, the mentor of Team Newswire, Dr. Asha Binoraj Ma'am, and the mentor of Dot Club, Krishna Datsena Sir.
We would also like to give a huge shout out to our sponsors for today's event Cherry Blossoms, ClickoCart, Crick Academy, Culture Legends, D Gamers, Filter Beans, 4Vision, Henry Hardwin, QI Media, QI Tech, Story Network, Tripore, Soundsworth Manipur, and Kriti Henna. Now, before we proceed, there are some general instructions we would like you all to adhere to. Please keep your cameras on at all times. Your mics should be on mute. You may use the chat box for highlighting any questions or concerns.
Team Newswire is the official news and media portal of IBS Hyderabad that works towards keeping its readers updated with news from all around the world, along with events happening around the premises. With our events, conclaves, and panel discussions, we bring practical knowledge to our community about corporate lives through taboo topics and events such as the Human Library. Team Newswire provides the opportunity to the students of IBS Hyderabad to refashion their erudite ideologies towards the corporate world by encouraging versatility in its domains to achieve a broader perspective of the corporate culture.
Dot Club, the official techno-managerial club of IBS Hyderabad, believes in nurturing the analytical skill sets and tech-savvy attitude for resolving emerging managerial challenges, along with a horizontal focus on academic learning and employability. Today, for the conclave, we have with us all the panel members for today's discussion.
Our first panel member is Joydev Mukherjee sir, who is the founder and director of A-Slot, which is a group of seasoned business consultants helping organizations in designing and implementing business transformation programs to drive aggressive revenue growth through sharp and result-driven training models. He is a diploma holder in hotel management, hospitality administration from IHM CTA. He is a business leader specializing in planning and delivering top and bottom line results, a person who is keen on building and sustaining relationships, a team player with the ability to create and sustain a positive work environment which fosters team performance and accelerates growth. His experience in the corporate and business world spanning over 28 years is really something that we all can marvel at. Thank you, sir, for being with us here today as part of this esteemed panel. We are happy to have you here.
Thanks a lot.
Our second panel member for the day is Rohit Katyal sir, who transitioned as a business leader from traditional to startup ecosystem with expertise in digital fintech, lending, and digital payments. He has been a part of fast-growing startups and helped in its growth and establishment. He is currently the director and head of BFSI sales at Razorpay. His growth from being the area sales manager at ICICI Bank to being the national head of BFSI sales at Razorpay is a journey that can help provide a lot of insights on the topic for the evening today. Thank you, sir, for being with us today. We are happy to have you here.
My pleasure. And thanks
Our
for
third
inviting.
panel member is Ms. Shweta Srivastav, who is a Prince 2 and ITIL certified professional with more than 18 years of experience in technology roadmap planning, business IT alignment, IT service delivery management, project management, IT operations, IT infrastructure planning and management, cloud computing, and compliance management. She completed her MBA from IMT Ghaziabad in 2016. She is currently the CTO of Paul Merchant Group companies and is known to possess exceptional ability in coordinating with different departments and functions to ensure customer satisfaction and problem resolution. Her experience in IT infrastructure and models can surely bring out insights on the topic that we have set for the evening. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us here today.
Thank you so much.
Now, we will be handing over to the moderator of today's discussion, Ms. Ritushri Goswami. Thank you.
Thank you, Ankus. Thank you, Vishal and Hiral. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome, sir. And I would say that, ma'am, at this point of time, ma'am and sir, would you guys like to start with the discussion? Like, if you have individual discussions which you want to give on the topic, or else we have few questions from the MBA students where we can start with the questionnaire and then go to the discussion depending on the questionnaire. Anything would be fine.
So I guess my view would be that we are industry people. We can continue talking about technology. It is more relevant considering that the audience is students who are, gearing up to enter into the industry, that's my personal view. We should take their questions and we should help them, on board onto the industry and ride on this wave which they are going to, join very soon. Joydeep and Rohit, what's your thought?
Yeah, I kind of okay with it, but I was thinking that it would be completely the choice of the students how they would want to take it forward. If you want us to speak for 15-20 minutes, I think all of us can speak. We can speak for more, but we'll restrict ourselves to 15-20 minutes. Or if you want the Q&A to start from the beginning, it is your choice because our times are booked for 2 hours and we can do it either way.
Yes, sir. So I think so. Then it would be better if we can go ahead with a discussion of 15-20 minutes and then we can start with the question hour. Like first, if we can go with Joydeep sir, then Shweta ma'am, and then Rohit sir, then we can go it in this way, sir. So then it yes, then we can collect all
Perfectly
the
fine.
questions together. Yes.
Yeah.
So Joydeep sir, you can start. Sir.
Okay, so one thing I would like to set the context at the beginning. I think SIR is a culture which is not driven by technology. So if I may request, but there is no pressure from my side, if you all can drop the SIR, I'm sure Rohit and Shweta would have a similar view. I'm perfectly okay being called Joydev. Yes, I have got 28 years of experience, but at heart, I am just 20 years. So you can freely call me Joy or Joydev or even JD. My friends call me JD. So
And
I
we're
would
all
love
still
to.
learning, and it's an endless learning for the entire lifetime. So we can never say that, okay, we are experts and there's nothing to learn now. So it's good that we will also feel part of the student clan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I lost in between a couple of minutes. My net was not. I think if you're talking about something learning, I mean, I would say that I'm still a student. In after 20 years of my career, I'll still remain a student for next till the time I'm working alive. And it should be the philosophy everywhere that it's a learning day. So I remember days when I started my career in banking was a very traditional one. Manual processes in process and processes were there. And today everything enabled by tech. And I've learned last 7 years the tech side being a non-techie. I'm not an engineer by background. So learning the tech side is something towards that. I mean, if we were just talking about that, I'm okay. How Shweta or JD you said. I mean,
So,
I hope.
Sir, just
Yeah.
as Rohit sir had actually lost connection, so sir, actually we had decided that first there would be a 15-20 minutes of discussion where first Joydev sir, then Shweta ma'am, then Rohit sir, you can go ahead and first a 15-20 minutes of individual explanation about the topic and then we can move on to the questionnaire which the students have. So, sir, you can go ahead with the discussion.
Sure. I'm okay with anyways.
So I have made the efforts or tried to put in a small PPT together for this discussion. It is not a GYAN session. It is completely about a perspective which I would want to share with everyone out here. It is a very small presentation where there is no facts and figures. It's a perspective on the digital India. And as Shweta mentioned in the beginning, like there's a huge jump which we have taken during this period of pandemic. And so it is while digital India leveraging new IT solutions and innovations for smarter, connected, and digitally empowered India is the vision of the current Indian leadership and the population together. I think all are in sync with this. What I would like to talk about is the digital adoption and how to prepare for it. So, yes, we belong to that age when I think when I was discussing this with my daughter, who happens to be a second-year student in one of our Delhi colleges, she asked me, Papa, when did you start using the computer for the first time? And as Rohit said, I said, Beta, I did it in the year 1994. And she said, wow. And to that, the answer was we did a CD backslash. Today, if I ask my kids or anyone who might be the audience out here, for you, computer and technology and digital is a way of life. You just can't think of a life without that. But then, what is the context? How do you see us adapting to this whole situation? So yes, 1980s, we saw the computer being introduced into the country by, I think Rajiv Gandhi was there at that time. And I happened to be working in West Bengal, and I still remember hartal or bands being called because everyone thought computers would lead to unemployment. But then we have seen computer going into computing and then into networks. So networks, first there were I don't remember I don't know whether you would know the LANs, the WANs, local area networks, the wide area networks, the city area networks, and so on and so forth, which were basically private networks connecting various computing systems or computers or offices. And that is how the kind of discussions on unified technology were happening. And this journey was on. So in this journey, what happened was, is computer required or not vanished. How to have the computer became a reality. And then from there, I think we transitioned to cloud right now. So now the discussion is cloud. So everything is on the cloud. We are living in the cloud. The WWW has come in. So we are again adopting technology, adopting digital environment. And now the debate is kind of warming up or heating up on the cloud-based services. I'm sure the current students would be very, very familiar with the words which a cloud infrastructure or cloud-based service model brings in, which is infra as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. Again, in our days when unified communication, which I was just discussing with Rohit before the formal discussion started, was an kind of enigma we lived with, kind of a virtual thought process that how is it going to actually happen that my emailing, my voice, my video, my chat, my storage will all converge into one link. And believe you me, today we are discussing that. And that's kind of a reality for us, which we take as de facto existence. When we talk about cloud services today, again, we are into the debate, whether cloud or on-premise, and so on and so forth. But understand the world is moving rapidly towards this, and going forward, these will be the reality. And the future is AI. I think artificial intelligence is something of the enigma today. Like in my younger days, the year being 1998, when I held my first mobile phone in my hand and made the call standing on the road in the streets of Kolkata, it was like, oh my God, this is a reality. And then the thought was, tomorrow I will be able to make video calls on that. Yes, that was the kind of Star Trek moment for us, that tomorrow I will be able to see the pictures of my people anytime, anywhere, live on my phone or my handheld device. Going on from here, now the AI is again something we are living with today. And very often the question comes, will AI replace humanity? Because again, digital adoption, technology adoption, whenever we are talking to many people in enclaves, a very oft repeated statement is, tomorrow it will be the machines which will be there and humans will have no roles. But understand what AI is. AI goes through its own stages of its development. Stage one, AI says, let us this slide out here gives the example of a car being driven, because automated cars or car moving on its own, or drone, automated drone, which is doing a self-delivery, is the closest to AI related service that is coming for our experience right now. So stage one of AI is something which is depicted in the first picture, which says that it warns you of the action. Suppose you have moved onto a wrong lane, the AI will prompt you. You have changed the lane. Now it is for you to decide whether the lane change was right, wrong, or you need to take a corrective action. That is the stage one of an artificial intelligence. Stage two is prompting you for action, which I think most of us are very familiar with, because anyone and everyone who has used a Google map will be getting a prompt like, you have a turn 200 meters ahead. In an AI, move left, there is a car to your right, or there is an obstruction to your right. So that is a prompting you for the action, which means the AI is supporting you or guiding you to take a decision. And the stage three, of course, we all know it is an autonomous car moving, where it is not only taking the decisions, but also implementing the decisions. So this is how AI looks like, and it will slowly and slowly get perfected over time into multiple and multitudes of activities in our day-to-day life, and also in our planning, strategizing, and stuff like that. But the big thing is, if we saw computers getting implemented in the 1980s and we took a 20-year journey to kind of adopt it, so there were many organizations who were early to adopt and some were very late to adopt, and thus they kept on. There was always a platform where some people were just getting into computers, some people were at a very advanced stage of computing, networking, and cloud-based service adoptions. This will continue throughout the journey of technology-based adoptions and technology being used to drive business and business results. So the big question is that man and machine will coexist for a long time to come, but the roles they will play will change, and it will be completely so technology will keep on improving, adoption will keep on improving. However, there will be someone at every stage of adoption and technology enhancement happens simultaneously at the same point in time. This is a very important perspective which I would want everyone to kind of hold on with till I move on to the next part, which is coming to the perspective, which is India. India, as we all know, is a country of paradoxes, and there is a huge, huge digital divide. I think one of the very oft quoted words of the Indian wisdom is that India lives in its villages. But let's now check some interesting facts about India. The absolute count of villages in India has come down, which means that the urban population will be more than the rural population in the next 20 years. Now, that's a huge, huge shift, which means 50% plus population of India will be urban population. And the bigger fact in that is the population of India will not be driven, the urban population of India will not be driven because people are migrating to the cities for job and other activities, livelihoods, which has been the trend so far. It is because that the more and more rural areas will get identified as urban areas. It is stated that NCR will become 100% urbanized. So will be Kerala. And many of the northern cities will be 80% plus urbanized. That's a paradigm shift which is happening with regards to India. And also, India has been a back office executor. So we have been a BPO kind of service provider where we have been implementing and executing initiatives of others. Lot of initiatives currently, lot of understandings currently, and lot of developments currently, both at a governance level, at a corporate level, at an awareness level. This fact is slowly changing. So if I may use the word made in India as catching phrase or catching steam, primarily because of the fact that it has been come to our understanding that cut and paste and implement is not working for India. India is unique in its demography and geography and cultural existence. So made in India, made for India, made by India products are currently gaining strength, especially in the technology area. And more efforts are being made into that. And India is becoming a powerhouse of technology and its initiatives and its technology-driven solutions. But at the same time, there exists a very big chasm, a chasm which is very glaring in its existence. We all know that MSMEs are the backbone of our employment and business. It is a substantial part of both organized and unorganized sector to drive the business and the GDP of the country. But less than 34% of them actually use tech for their advantage. The future of technology adoption is said to be driven by SaaS. SaaS is software as a service, and more efforts and energy is being driven to implement SaaS-based software models. That adoption is abysmal, less than 7%. So what does this mean? Why is this so? What are the challenges that the corporate is facing for why they are not adopting technology? And the points are mentioned out here. So there is a lack of knowledge. If there is a lack of knowledge, the tools are themselves so complicated or requires such deep understanding that a SME or MSME or a corporate finds it difficult to adopt it. The costs sometimes become prohibitive. And of course, the people who know this becomes a challenge. I will elaborate this with a small example. We all definitely have a mobile phone in our hands. The strange thing is that today we use less than maybe 10% of the mobile phone in terms of its capability and capacity to do what it can do in terms of communication and productivity and enhancement of our work-life processes. It is very similar that we use less than maybe 5% of our brain or maybe less than 10% of our physical attributes. So it is both a lack of knowledge and a lack of application, which leads to a very low level of adoption of digital technology in the world that is today. But there is a brighter side to this. You know, what is the brighter side? Again, I come back to my favorite example of mobile phones. India is a country which jumped from landlines to mobile phones. While most of the developed countries have transitioned through an interim technology called pagers, I don't think many of the students who are present in this meeting today will be aware of a technology or know that we did use pagers for some time. And many of the developed countries use this for a significant period of time. But we took a jump. We dropped this and moved straight away to mobile. So while the great Indian chasm exists, or the divide exists, the digital divide exists, there is a lot of challenges for the adoption, which is clearly spelled out, but there is hope because India has shown it in the past. So what are the drivers for tech adoption? Now, this is something which is very, very important from all of our perspective, because you all are the students of the future, or sorry, you are the students of the day and the leaders of the future. And very importantly, it is to understand that how and where tech adoption happens. So there are certain external factors for tech adoption to happen. Infra, both digital and physical. So if there is a digital fiber backbone being laid in the country, if there are towers coming up, which enables the digital infrastructure to play out, or the backbone or the pipes which is being laid, that is very, very critical, because if connectivity is not there, technology will not happen. Second, the most important part, if people who are to use the technology are not educated, it is not going to help. So education has to reach to the last level, and it is not about theoretical knowledge. It is about the knowledge to use the technology to drive the business results of productivity and efficiency which one is expected to drive. And the last part, which is very critical, again, external. If anyone and everyone, anyone who's into providing a tech-based service, it has to be very, very, very user-friendly. It cannot be the difficult coding-based technology which requires a lot of learning. It has to be plug and play. It has to be very simple. So technology has to come as a service, which is just plug and play. And it is just like opening a computer or a laptop today and typing on the keyboard, and you're guided to do anything and everything. So technology as a service, those who are the creators of tech services needs to keep that in mind. So that is the key part from the external factors. And the other is the internal culture. Not everyone will be a tech creator, but many will be implementers of change in the organizations they work for, or the organizations they are a part of. Believe you me, the toughest change is to drive that change of adoption. Technology adoption is the most critical thing. And many times, many times, the reason for a tech-enabled transition has not happened because the people have not accepted the change. Like, it took us a long time to understand that yes, physical meetings are not required. We can do it on the collaboration tools. We need not always travel. We need not always pay through cash. We can pay digitally. We need not always be present physically for anything and everything. But we needed a pandemic for that change. Understand, in organizations, this does not happen, but a leader can make that difference. So many of you who are present today will be the leaders of organizations tomorrow. So driving that internal culture change to adopt technology will be very critical. I can go on about talking about what are the factors which prevent those adoptions, but then there is a discussion for another time. From our side, we as an organization have made a small step. We are dedicated to partner in creating the gainful engagements for career initiatives from youth to retirement. And we have adopted technology for this. We have made an effort. We are part of a Government of India initiative to drive adoption of knowledge through technology. And Also, we are there for, we are building a career guidance and management system through AI, which is unbiased. We are providing a recommendation engine for undergoing online courses, certifications, and degrees. There is vocational training through our organization where we provide in-house internship, which gives you on-the-job exposure to real work. And also, if you want to take the entrepreneurial journey, we are there to help you. And to make knowledge available at the last mile level, we have built a SaaS-based learning management system, whereby you can upload your content and make it available, and it is a completely user-friendly vernacular language. So what I have been speaking so long as an organization, and after 25 years of work life and as a corporate, me and my organization are working towards implementing the same thought and philosophy to make education and technology available at the mass level to improve its adoption. And we really look forward to this journey which is a very exciting journey. And of course, there is lots and lots of learning. So if I say I am 20, it's because when you step into this ocean, you realize that you don't even know the beaches or the shorelines of what lies ahead of you. It's a day of constant struggle, day of constant learning, constant discoveries, and fun. And that gives me the clear insight that yes, while there are brilliant strides being made by many corporates towards adopting technology, it is not an easy journey, and India will have to put its heart and soul together to make this journey a success. What this means for you all out here is that there is a huge opportunity for you. It is not only about creating the AI-based robots which will replace human beings, but it is working in small bits, in small pockets, solving one problem at a time. And there are millions of problems to solve. Solve one problem at a time, make adoption the key. Whatever you develop, always have this thought, will it be easy for the end user to adopt it? And what problem I am solving for the end user? It may not always be a unicorn that you need to plan or a multi-billion-dollar idea. Even small steps are brilliant. And that's where I would like to end my talk today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those wonderful insights. It was really inspiring. Shweta ma'am, we'll request you to continue with the discussion.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Joydeep, for encouraging all the students with a lot of insights and sharing your experience since the day we started our careers and where we are today. And what we see today is very, very different. It looks like it's been ages and centuries where we started from. But like you emphasized again, learning has no end and it has to go on. And every day there is something that comes up as a new opportunity. And one should always be welcoming and forthcoming in adopting that. That's very, very important. I'm sorry I haven't prepared any PPT or anything. I was just thinking that because there are students, they are used to taking so much gyans every day. I never want to bore you at all. Quickly, I'll touch upon certain things which I think are important to highlight, and then I will be open for questions if somebody would want to ask anything. So again, taking from where Joy we've started, yes, we started our careers when there used to be command line coding, and we've written all the syntaxes ourselves, so right from CD slash, like Rohit mentioned, and then if then else, arrays, classes, and look at it now we have low code platforms. So there is hardly anything that we have to write in terms of code, but that does not mean that the opportunity for a developer is end. There is an endless opportunity, but a lot of convenience has come into picture. So what's important here is that instead of mugging up the syntaxes, we have to think. So a lot of analytical thinking is something that we need to imbibe into us. And one should be able to think, how is your solution going to help the end customer? This is also something that Joydeep highlighted, that ultimately whatever you plan to build, it may be a line of code, it may be a device, it may be an IoT, wearables, mobility, anything that you're doing, ultimately the end user, the end consumer should be benefited out of it, and it should be seamless. So all of us are on all social media platforms like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Did anyone teach you how to use it? So imagine when somebody would be building it, a team who was working on building this platform thought so much. So that's the thought which is important. So this also is one of the key things, that come what may, there may be AI, there may be ML, there may be analytics, but ultimately it is somebody's brain which is working in the back end. So the opportunity never ends with AI, the opportunity never ends with robotics. There is some human brain which is running at the back end, which is making it possible. So we have to become one of those. Let us not get driven by machines, let us drive the machines. So don't get overwhelmed with a lot of digitalization that's happening around us. The rupee note is getting converted into digital currency, it is getting converted into cryptocurrency very soon, but that does not mean that there is no human mind that's running behind it. There's blockchain technology, somebody is working on it, right? When we started, we used to, draw flowcharts, one hexagon and then an decision box, yes, no, this, that. Now, when you think like a human mind, you would draw a mind map. I'm sure all of you would have started using mind map. It's not a simple flowchart because we don't think in a yes or no manner. There's endless opportunities. So just that the horizon has increased, it has expanded, and you have to all the time think out of the box. Then with a lot of digitalization and computerization around, a lot of stress is getting built on the security aspect of it. There's a lot of security requirements. So any application developer, if he's writing a line of code, he has to think from the perspective of an attacker. How is my code going to be phished? What if there is a ingestion in between? So that is something that you have to think of. Instead of thinking that, okay, I'm writing select star from this table. No, we have to think beyond that. What if somebody who gets access to your database, he runs a select star, he should not be able to extract data out of it. That's where we have to think. So traditional thought process is over. Now the time is to think beyond that. That is personally what I wanted to add here, because I know all of us, all of you guys, you know the technology like back of your hand. We don't need to share anything on the technology. It's just the experience that you may definitely gain from people like Joydeep, Rohit, and whatever experience I have, I will be open to sharing that. Please feel free to ask questions. I don't have anything else to add here.
Thank you so much, Shweta ma'am. Ma'am, first, it would be better if Rohit sir completes his part, and then
Sure,
we can
please.
get on to the question.
Sure.
All
I'm,
over to you.
I mean, first of all, thank you everybody, and a very good evening, and thanks the Dot Club for inviting us here. I'm not sure what to speak. I mean, since I also don't have a deck or a PPT around to discuss, but rightly few points as mentioned by Shweta, I would like to add upon, since the topic was Digital India as a program, and I mean, I'm just adding on here. See, for Digital India program, the main vision is the digital infrastructure, which is as a core utility to every citizen. That's the main vision. If you will check, is that. And one of the key points to it is mobile phone, as mentioned by our friend JD here, even, and mobile phone and bank account enablements, which are helping the citizen participation in digital and financial space, is very important. And I, being from a fintech, I always keep talking about that piece, right? So in last few years, I've seen that there has been a lot of infiltration of technology into different areas of our lives. You see so many new segments have just got up, like edutech, or you talk about health tech or fintech. So everything today is being enabled by that. As rightly mentioned by my friend Shweta here, I mean, there was a time when we were more towards product centric approach in life. Today it's more of experience based approach. All right, anything which we are trying to build is towards how we are empowering our user. It's all towards the user or the UX, right? Even banking and financial services is not been left out on that. And fintech is typically the bridge where it is helping the banking and financial services in this rapid shift by providing affordability, accessibility to the entire services, the basic services around it, like the birth of neo banks, or you talk about digital first banks, which I'm talking about, or adoption of digital payments in the COVID time, how it has increased. I mean, when Shweta was saying nobody has taught us how to use WhatsApp. WhatsApp today is enabled by even a payment. So you guys can understand how dynamically we are changing. And two things from here, since when you build your career or you want to get, just understand it's not about skills these days. It's not about the skills. It's about how we can be participative to an ongoing ecosystem in various functions where we are, whether we are from HR, whether we are from, for example, giving an example of HR. Today, there are so many advanced payroll systems being used. HRMS players are there in the market, or any function, whether it is a function of a finance guy here. I don't know which all streams you people are, or you're only from the tech side, but since it's an IBS Hyderabad. But I'm talking about from a perspective that if I'm a finance guy, that how am I aligned with GSTN? Again, it's GSTN has always been a part of Digital India piece, right? And how it is, it's a very complex IT solution which was created at a time, and how over a period how it has been evolved. So nothing is left out. Keep learning around it and keep building around it. And that's my motto is, I'm a sales guy. So we as salespeople provide a lot of inputs about our customers or clients to our product teams, to our solution teams. And this is when you are in a sales function, then you should be a part of that bridge, in fact. So very generic. I can talk a lot about fintech. I mean, but I want to utilize it. Okay, fine. Let's take this to a more, I mean, question answer session, and any questions you have planned out to ask us related to the topic, we love to give answers around that. But yes, definitely, India is encouraging innovation. We have seen from the payment space. I always say there has been easier payments now, and a time when we used to use cash. By the way, guys, I started my career at Hyderabad in way 2000, and ICICI Bank was my first employer, and I have a lot of memories. Hyderabad has been my second home. All right, I started my career at Panjagutta regional office there, and if you people are from the campus, you can understand what I'm talking about, right? It is now changed. I've seen those days when ATM was the key proposition of a private bank versus a PSU bank, and today see where we are now. I've seen that transition when we used to acquire our customers, that why you should bank with ICICI or HDFC or any private bank. The propositions at that time was core banking system. The proposition was ATM. Sir, आपके मोहल्ले में ATM है, आपके street में ATM है. You can go. It's convenience. Today, it's on your mobile. Everything. Even a prepaid or a postpaid card or a corporate working capital you require, everything can be taken over a mobile. Is where the journey is all about, and we are all fortunate to be a part of it. So, and maybe we can take the questions now from here.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for those wonderful insights. Question which we have, guys, is that what are the transformative impact that Digital India program has over the last 7 years in various domains, be it in the government sector or the private sector? Uh, so we can start from Joydeep sir, then Shweta ma'am, and then Rohit sir. Eh, That this is the question which is there from the students. Yes.
So if I understand correctly, yeah, the impact of the Digital India initiatives on life. Have I understood the question right?
Yes, impact of the Digital India program over the last 7 years onto various domains, like whether be it the government sector or the private sector.
Okay, so I will name a quick few which I am familiar with, and of course I will request Shweta and Rohit to add and move on with that. I think one of the biggest thing which has happened over the last 7 years, though the journey started a long time back, and I being from the telecom background, is telecommunication itself. So telecommunication from a luxury to a snobbish affair has moved, or thankfully moved, to being a basic infrastructure right now. And I think that at a core level in itself is a huge, huge, huge transition. If I talk about government initiatives, I still remember I got my first passport, I think, in 4 years' time, and my first telephone in 3 years' time, my home telephone. That was a landline. And I being a sales background, same as Rohit, I used to be the salesperson, and my account was BSNL. And I would go to their switch room and try to understand why this is taking such a long time. And then I would see their huge rooms. That was the only room which was air conditioned. The rest of the office was not. And there were wires all over the place. Now, that is something which is completely wiped out. So telecom moving as a basic infrastructure, I think it is the neural network on which the entire digital transformation is going to be worked out of. So right now we have got our pipes, especially the Reliance pipes, the Tata Communication, which was erstwhile the VSNL, their pipes, and many hops leading both out of Chennai and Mumbai, and now I think Gujarat has been added to it, which makes our connectivity much faster. So our latency at a level of technology is something which is almost at world-class levels, which enables us real time, and I think Rohit would kind of add to this, fintech transactions happening, which eliminates a lot of risk. That is one part. So that is at an infrastructural level, and at the second level, I think while there are certain structural changes of ease of doing business, but the sheer initiative led by Government of India to enable the adoption of digital and leading the way from it, I think one of the major areas is the motor vehicles department, if I may say so. So I would say that if you have been following that, because I work very closely with the MORTH and its guidelines, and we are working on some very close projects over there. So the entire registration process. So RTO is now out. In Delhi, you don't need to get into RTO. So your entire RTO activity is now online. The toll part, the hashtag part, the infrastructural part, the e-billing part. Now it is very easy to say that I have got a Netflix, so that as I am digitally, I am entertained. It is very easy to say that I have got now say I can talk to my friends anytime. Now these are very fringe benefits which a core facility enables its citizens to enjoy. But the core activities actually drive the system. It is like the heart, the liver, the lungs, which is not visible. You see the face, the nose, the eyes, and appreciate the beauty. But I think at a core level, lots and lots of activities are happening. I think I am a big beneficiary of Razorpay because, and I'm not saying because it is Rohit out here, but it brings to me mind because today I am able to be an entrepreneur because Razorpay allowed a connectivity with me when ICICI, HDFC, and SBI did not. Now, Today, ICICI, HDFC, and SBI run after me. Please take my connectivity, but I am still with Razorpay. This private play, which has been enabled by government as an infrastructural enabler and allowing the private players to play critical role into structural events, has led to a very critical adoption of digital initiatives in the country. And I think we are going to see the benefits of this in the long run. And the last one, the entire GSTIN being automated and digitized, the tax part, I think is a feather in the cap of all the initiatives. That's my views.
Yes. Shweta ma'am.
Yeah, so taking on from Joydeep, I think yes, government has taken a lot of such initiatives and eased a lot of issues where people used to struggle in terms of their bill payments, utility bill payments. In fact, NPCI, the government RBI setup, has a lot of products which are reaching out till the last mile and helping the consumers in all possible ways. So we have our bill payment services where it is a single platform where you can pay any of your utility bills, you can pay your hospital bills, school fees, loan EMIs, all of that is enabled. Then we are also customers of Razorpay, and which makes it easy because I am representing an NBFC. So my regulators are RBI and IRDA, so we are a regulated entity, and they expect a lot of prompt responses in terms of the transactions that we do, and the transactions are supported by technology partners like Razorpay. So the payouts that happen seamlessly on a click of a button, we are able to pay our end vendors. Then the service that we are, one of the service that we are giving is domestic money transfer. So anybody from any part of the country can send money to their families back home using internal infrastructure which is supported by Razorpay. So let's not make it Razorpay, promotion session per se, but I'm just trying to highlight that how such services have made life easy and convenient for the end customers. And from the point of private organizations, of course, we know that any and every product or service anybody has to offer, the best channel to reach out to the end consumer is the digital channel. So unless you run a campaign on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, you will not be able to attract your end customer. That's the way where we are able to touch each and every target segment. So that has really enabled us, as in from the sales point of view. Service point of view also, because of the technology, the customer is able to reach to us using an IVR and then, connecting to a toll-free number, or directly reaches out to my CRM. And then there is an intelligence built in my CRM which takes over and is able to attend to my customer without a physical agent supporting them. So that's the kind of technology benefits that we have experienced and witnessed so far, and which has made our lives as in the end customer's life, very, very convenient. Rohit, on to you.
First of all, thank you so much, Mr. Mukherjee and Shweta. I think you mentioned Razorpay, that at least it's not about Razorpay promoting, but it's about creating a dent where as I said, fintech today is making financial services or bridging these services by the help of availability, accessibility, and affordability. So digital payments or neo banking or digital first banks, these are all a part of that, a part of the digital infrastructure, right? And as the question says, what's the transformative impact? Definitely, you've covered a lot around that. I always say digital infrastructure is the key vision of Digital India. And fintech has really played a big role with the use of artificial intelligence, with the use of machine learning, data analytics, process automation, blockchain. I mean, it is completely transforming the entire financial activities. Banking and financial services, as I previously said, it's no longer product centric. It's an experience based model. And then coming to what Shweta mentioned, I mean, today all the citizen to business payments, which we call retail payments, like getting into a local transport or travel or e-commerce, or maybe today in our modern life, the entire life cycle from buying milk, for example, in the morning to paying household mates or school fee or doctor expenses or watching movie, everything is getting covered under a modern day markets through this digital infrastructure. I mean, this is really playing a very transformative role in the entire Digital India program out there. So these are my views to it, maybe, which are very much absolutely agree with Shweta and JD, both of them.
Thank you so much, Joydeep sir, Rohit sir, and Shweta ma'am. So the next question which we have from the MBA students are, what is the role of the Digital India program in empowering the Indian citizens? Like the initiative of the Digital India program in empowering the Indian citizens.
Okay, maybe shall I keep continuing? I had a little deadline around 6:30, 6:45. If I can part of it. Okay. So, I mean, coming back to this question, digital empowerment of citizens is one of, again, key roles of this program, the Digital India program. All right. Government of India has launched so many initiatives. I would here talk about Smart Cities mission. It was launched somewhere in 2015 by the Government of India. The idea is to promote the sustainable and inclusive cities that provide core infrastructure and give a decent quality of life to us, which means citizens, and that through the enablement of smart solutions. So what I'm saying here is smart cities, as an examples, are connected cities as a part of this this empowerment to the citizens, right? And again, coming back to the digital payments front, where like players like NPCI, who have developed very key digital payment railroads like UPI, or everybody knows what UPI is, Unified Payments Interface, right? Easier, which has replaced the digital wallets over the year. I started my career at Paytm. The first fintech was Paytm. I see how the transformation has happened from a digital wallet adoption to UPI. Then came Aadhaar-enabled payment systems, and I'm sure Paul merchants, Shweta, how you people must be utilizing APS to an extent, and all this. And now, if you see, the next is they're testing on a voice-based payments even, right? Where, for the feature phone users, especially where there is a connectivity issues or there are low connectivity zones. So these are all examples of empowering Indian citizens under a Digital India program. The latest one was, not the latest, I would say, which was covered by our esteemed Mr. JD here, about RTO at the door by the Delhi government, which citizens can avail the online transport related document services and without visiting the regional transport offices. Or there's so many of e-governance initiatives which are empowering the citizens around it. So these are my views. Over to you, to Mr. JD or Shweta, anybody.
So I think Rohit has covered it all. I suppose because Rohit is pressed for time, even I have a hard stop at 6:30. Let's just do one question with one person. I guess we all are in sync and we're sort of synchronizing already.
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir, Rohit sir. That was really insightful. So one question we have is that how this initiative is helping the startups to foster in our country, especially during this pandemic period. So we have seen that a lot of startups are growing up at this point of time. So how did the Digital India program has actually helped it during this pandemic period?
You want me to take it?
Yes, ma'am. You can go.
All right. So this also is part of empowerment that government plans to give to the smaller enterprises and the new budding, entrepreneurs like you guys. A lot of you would want to start your entrepreneur journey exactly when you were out of the college. So this is sort of an support and empowerment that government wants to extend. And in light of that, government has eased out a lot of regulatory requirements which a startup is otherwise supposed to do. A lot of documentation formalities are reduced, and funding also is to some extent, there are a lot of plans and programs from government agencies where you can avail that when you are applying for a Startup India program. So there are a lot of initiatives that government is taking, which is in favor of the startups. With respect to the Digital India program, there a lot of startups are primarily based on the technology provided solutions that are provided. So there are subsidies that are extended. There are a lot of funding that is coming from government as well as the private agencies. So there are angel investors and there are other investing agencies who are interested. There are those. That what is you call the college run smaller incubator programs that are also there, so that also helps people like young entrepreneurs who want to try their hands on a startup. So these are some of the things that are coming to my mind right now. I'm not very hands on this. I'm from a traditional organization, so probably Joydeep may add here.
Yeah, I will take on because I am living that life of startup.
Okay.
And believe you me, if the current initiatives were not in place, startup would have been a very different ball game than what it is today. So today, believe you me, apart from very core sales function, the entire operations of a startup can be outsourced or can be run through plug and play. So CRMs, payment gateways, HRMS, learning management systems, name, whatever you name is available on. So Zoho is there. It is one of the biggest example of how an Indian enterprise gives you an end-to-end solution to run your organization. And there is Tally, which takes care of your accounting and stuff like that. Now, these may seem ubiquitous and part of our life, but understand today that they are plugging into my laptop and giving me a portal to manage my business is something which could not be thought of earlier. And my entire organization is outsourced. It is managed through gig work culture, and it is managed through contracts. So currently, if I have got, I may be wrong, but about 70 to 80 people working for my various work domains, which is happening. On my role, I would have less than 12 people. But these people are working dedicatedly, remotely through a digital infrastructure connected, and there is performance monitoring, attendance monitoring, everything happening. So I don't feel the absence of an office. And today I am saving a lot of time from managing unproductive things like kya wo aadmi kaam kar raha hai ki nahi kar raha hai, because at the end of the day I have a report to look at which is automated, digitized, and driven from some remote server who specializes in that job. To me to do that job, I would take ages. I would not even do it in a lifetime. So I don't want to lead the life of a Tata who has taken 3 generations to set up a organization. I would like to lead the life of an Infosys whereby Narayan Murthy, where he sets it up in 30 years. And today, the opportunities provided that the same thing can be done in 5 years. Today, there are unicorns which are coming up in 3 years, 5 years, 7 years. There cannot be a bigger example of how digitization is impacting the startup environment.
In fact, if you allow, I'll like to add something here. Right, as Mr. JD himself is an entrepreneur and is running the business himself. I mean, for me, startups needs to be incentivized for the development of the last mile infrastructure. I mean, for localizing services or application, as mentioned by Mr. JD, it's very important. And when we say the initiatives taken here, I mean, I've seen various government departments, can't recall it at this point, who have taken proactive measures in improving digital adoption, or for me, in my area of domain, payment adoption. Like, for example, they were mandating digital payment adoption in various e-governance services, or providing tax breaks for digital payments is the other one. I mean, especially for the startup community, or incentivizing citizens and merchants by monetary benefits, so that the adoption of the digital payment during the COVID or before COVID period or post demonetization can accelerate. So these are certain points which I would like to add up as a part of the views here.
Thank you so much, sir. So we have one more question from the side of the MBA students. That is, how can the Digital India Program initiative help our country in achieving the $1 trillion economy by 2024 to 2025?
On a lighter note, let Omicron pass. But that was on a completely lighter note. I couldn't help it. Sorry, but yes, I think I don't. Sorry,
Yeah,
Rohit, you may.
no, sir, please take this.
Yeah, I think this question will not be complete unless we look at the. See, it's a $1 trillion economy, and digitization has a role to play, but only that much of a role to play. There are various other things, and which are having far greater impact, significance. I would not use a comparative word, but I would say that they have significant impact on achieving this ambition. And a very important thing is there is the nation's will, and that nation's will is impacted through various internal and external factors. But yes, I think from the contribution that Digital India can make, I think it is well on its course from two factors, because the initiatives driven by Government of India in terms of putting the infrastructure, like I would say the vaccination drive, which is done through the Aadhaar integration, is a wonderful example what a quick turnaround time disaster management digitization can provide, and how government is equipped to handle it. To the ecosystem which has developed through private players who are now churning out world-class solutions at very short intervals, and a very robust NIC as an organization being there is churning out now world-class infrastructural products to enable work at a digital level. So I think Digital India is on its way to achieve actualization and enhancements. It is no more at a startup phase, is my personal view, and I would request view from Shweta and Rohit on this.
So, I mean, let me take it from the other angle now. Thank you so much, Mr. Jerry. I mean, definitely, yes, there has been a lot of initiatives. I'll talk more about initiatives which are towards ICT, or information communication and technology. That's more important, a part of digitization anywhere. And I'm sure Shweta will agree to it, being a CTO herself, or on the shoes of driving that. See, there has been initiatives like BharatNet, or digitization of the post offices, or smart cities, which I was talking just before it. And then there are initiatives like open API platforms of AEPS or UPI or BBPS, Bharat Bill Payment Systems, or GST, and these are all part of the India Stack program under the Digital India, right? And definitely, when all these efforts will aggregate towards a $1 trillion economy, which we are talking about, and I need to put some figures around it, specifically from the fintech aspects. I was talking to somebody yesterday and got a view. These are, I mean, the fintech industry where was till last year or last few years was around 2,000 billion, and will get increased to around 7,000, 6,200, 7,000 billion market by 2025, right? There, despite of two waves which we all have faced in coronavirus, and when JD was mentioning, I mean, the vaccination drive and everything, the India has 87% fintech adoption rate, which is really substantially more than the world's average adoption, which is 64%. So thanks to the internet penetration, mobile, penetration or the sort of banked or underbanked or unbanked population we have, the adoption rates have been quite high onto this. And India has witnessed almost, the other point where I really feel excited is $2.7 billion of fintech investment happened last year. This is the second largest till date. I mean, and I'm not talking, these numbers are from, I was talking to somebody who referred KPMG's report onto that, which really excites us, that where we are all moving towards. Okay. Then secondly, from a perspective, even you see in our lines during the COVID period, e-commerce has seen a tremendous growth. Today, so many D2C companies or SMEs, which are direct to consumer brands, started up and have become unicorns over a period. For example, Licious, or there's so many of them, or let's talk about Nykaa, and who came up with the IPO, successful one. I mean, skyrocketing smartphone and internet penetration has really led this rapid growth. Okay. And these will all fuel towards the $1 trillion economy. Consumer credit is the third one, which I'm talking about. You must be hearing about a new term called BNPL, buy now, pay later. Okay. I mean, buy now, pay later is nothing. It's an e-commerce or it's an embedded digital lending, especially which helps e-commerce for affordability, accessibility, or availability. These are the three A's I always keep talking about when it comes to consumers or products. Okay, so it really enables that. So these are certain things which are making the way for our economy to grow up, as an examples. So I can even talk about other things also. I mean, there must be then government initiatives towards some like computerization initiatives of even land record. They are trying to do maybe some projects like railway computerization on from the government side. They are not only indirectly helping the economy in terms of having revenue generation, but also indirect taxes, but also from a perspective of you can say a lot of employment happening around it. So I mean, I'm just covering some broader picture around it on the question asked.
Shweta ma'am, if you have any.
Yeah, so rightly put by JD and Rohit, there are a lot of initiatives which are taken, and the adoption shows that there is no way that we will not be reaching the trillion, target, like what our fellow students are questioning whether we will or not. It is no way that we'll have to think twice. Apart from that, like Rohit said, that mobility and penetration of internet has given, a smartphone in everybody's hands. Nowadays, a new thing that we've recently started noticing is neobanks, of course, is one where opening an account has become so easy with things like a video KYC or a CKYC. You don't need to walk into any of the branches of a bank, still, stand in the queue and get your account created. It is opened in couple of steps. You was asked to follow a couple of steps and your account is created. Then in terms of online transactions, there are so many opportunities in terms of wallets, in terms of UPI, in terms of cards. Talking about cards again, there are virtual cards also in the market, so you don't need to actually get a physical kit for that. You just have a virtual card and you can just start doing any transaction in a fraction of seconds. So these are things which are enabling. Then on the investment side, there are trillion of apps which are letting you invest by just going, downloading an app and opening a demat, and then everything is happening on a digital platform. So and very interestingly, I was doing a little bit of research on financial literacy of children, and there are so many new fintechs who've come up with the idea of financial literacy programs and investments that you want to inculcate in the younger kids, starting from the age of like 5 or 10. So the parents can, encourage their children to do certain tasks, and instead of, taking the kid to the, toy shop and giving the toy, They are instead encouraging them to use the app and do the savings there. So there is a pocket money which is coming to them through the app, and there is a there is some sort of saving that is happening in the name of the kid. So with all of that, I think there is no way that we will not be able to achieve the targets, the revenue and the profit that kind of what our students are questioning. Apart from that, there's no service that is not available with the phone. So anything that you when we are coming up with that wearables, and there is a contact payments. So there is an endless list of such initiatives which are all driven by technology in the back end, and it is making the life so easy. And the dependency also at the last mile is on the technology platforms.
Yes, ma'am. So we can actually see how digital world has changed India, changed our country, and changing everything around us. So Joydeep sir, Rohit sir, and Shweta ma'am, now I'm handing over it to the anchors. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We thank our esteemed guests for such an insightful session. Now the floor is open for questions. Kindly put your questions in the chat box. Okay, so we do have a question here. With the increasing amount of digital inventions, the traditional work environment in both private and government sectors, there is an increased difficulty in the middle-aged to senior-aged citizens in the adapting to these changes in the types of services that were usually availed. So how can this problem be circumvented, or can the transition be performed smoothly?
I think, answering this, yes, definitely the challenge is digital adoption itself has been a challenge over a period. Let's understand. I remember when I was at PTM or days, it was very difficult to convince people to use digital wallet because of the trust factor. All right. Then when the UPI came, it became very difficult for people to get the UPI ID created. Then at Razorpay, we have a very unique proposition called intent flow of UPI payment, where you don't, while you make a payment or you book a ticket online over a mobile, you don't need to remember UPI ID. Okay. So whatsoever PSP or you're using, whether it is Google Pay or Phone Pay XYZ, it automatically fetches that, and then you over the password authentication, you make a payment in a single click or two click, depending on the flow. But when it comes to the middle age or senior, my view is I'm very happy. My mother today buys vegetables via UPI payments. So the answer is though it has been challenging times, but when Shweta said, if you remember her words, that it's all about when you're building something, it's about the convenience of the customer. And these days, when any and everything which is towards digitization is towards, not towards the youngsters or millennials, it's towards everybody across, right, over a period. It's more of how conveniently the product which is disrupting are the ones which are agnostic of the customer segment in terms of the age group, but from the perspective of usage rather.
So I will like to add here that yes, it is difficult for the middle-aged and senior citizens. At the same time, it is a mandate that we, as in the service providers, are supposed to keep educating our customers, specifically talking about the online frauds that are happening. There's a like tremendous increase in the number of online frauds that are happening, and every day the cyber cell is on the job, and there are so many frauds, and most of the time the observation is that there was a compromise in terms of OTP or a password. So it's our responsibility as service providers to keep educating our customers, and we as flag bearers of the new new age technology. Back home with your friends, with your seniors, we should keep telling them to keep, the digital assets really, really safe. It does not holds true for your financial assets. It also holds true for your social identity. So I would like to take an opportunity to educate you people also when you are using any social media platform. Just be very, very aware of what are you exposing in terms of your personal information. It is very important to keep your personal information really, really confidential because this identity threat that's happening, there's this, your entire digital data will be what at stake. So whenever you are opening any suspicious link, just be very, very careful. When you're downloading a file from unknown sources, just be very careful. Receiving any emails from any unknown sources, just be very careful. It is very important. And at the same time, it is important to teach your elders because they may or might not notice such things. That is all from my end. Yeah.
So while those are very technical answers, I would like to build in on a perspective bit out here. I believe the audience out here is 20s, early 20s. Well, I am 50 plus. So it's a very perspective question. What is middle age? Now, and there is no pun intended. This is a very realistic thing because understand we all have started when we did not have computers. So we learned computers. On the way, we did not have access or we did not grow up with technology. Every time technology is being dumped on me, on us. However, it is natural progress of evolution of technology. Now, it is up to you to stay agile and young at mind, learn and grow. That is one aspect where you want to take leadership position. The other aspect is there is a huge workforce which may not come with this mindset. During our time, we have seen when State Bank of India, I was part of that program, implemented computers. There were mass educations, rounds and rounds, and many of the training institutes made huge money just training those people how to use the keyboard, enter their name and the password. But then they have transitioned. Many survived, grew, others remained clerks, managing files. Same is happening today in the digital transformation which is happening today. You would have heard the big four of technology and the big four of consulting undertaking reskilling activities for their employees, irrespective of age, to adapt them to the current way of things. Same is happening with the government. There is reskilling initiatives happening. There is an organization by the name of MEPSC, which is for driving change and skill to people at the managerial level. Now, today, it is said that knowledge is free. You put on YouTube, you can become a master chef, you can become a master psychiatrist. And there are millions of master chefs during the pandemic which has been created world over, just by YouTube. So if remaining illiterate is a choice, not a design. So my sincere urge, when you talk to your elders or your people or anyone who faces the challenge of being digitally incapable, tell them it is your choice. There is enough initiatives happening, and as responsible people from the fintech and the tech industry are telling that they are driving adoption. So I don't see this as a challenge. This is a mindset.
Thank you, sir and ma'am, for adding your thoughts on this question. Now, I, Hiral, on behalf of Team Newswire and Dot Club, extend our gratitude to the esteemed guests, Joydeep Mukherjee sir, Rohit Katyal sir, Shweta Srivastava ma'am, for gracing us with their presence. Your experience and knowledge have given us some major insights into how rejections can open paths for success.
We would like to thank our esteemed members of Faculty Dean Academics, ITS Hyderabad, C.S. Shailajan Sir, Student Activity Coordinator Madhavi Garikapati Ma'am, HOD of Operations and IT and Area Coordinator Shomadip Chakraborty Sir, Mentor of Team Newswire Dr. Asha Binuraj Ma'am, and the Mentor of Dot Club Krishna Dassina Sir, without whose constant support and motivation, this amazing panel discussion would not have been possible.
We would also like to thank our sponsors for today's event: Cherry Blossoms, ClickoCart, Crick Academy, Culture Legends, D Gamers, Filter Beans, 4Vision, Henry Harvin, QI Media, QI Tech, Story Network, Tripore, Soundsworth Manipur, and Kriti Hanna. A huge thanks to the entire team for making this panel discussion a successful one. Thank you and have a good day.
Thank you so much. It was indeed a
Thank
pleasure.
you so much.
Thank
Thanks for the
Thank you so much, IBS.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.